You'll never forget the first moment the Alps enclose you within walls of stone and mist, and the silence becomes an invisible judge, observing your every move. From dawn, herds of cows and horses slowly make their way along paths that seem carved by centuries of routine, while bells ring out among the valleys, a reminder that life here follows rules no one writes. Welcome to the isolated villages of the Swiss Alps, where the beauty of the landscape is not forgiving. It demands respect, resilience, and patience. Here, modernity arrives late, and nature dictates the rhythms. Farmers rise before sunrise, work until their bodies can take no more, and their children grow up learning to measure each step according to the terrain, the weather, and tradition. Among wooden cabins and grazing fields, you'll discover strong women, shaped by the mountains, whose beauty is accompanied by character and unspoken codes. The arrival of outsiders does not go unnoticed. Glances are exchanged, desire is measured in silence, and curiosity mingles with judgment. The cuisine is rustic, robust, and every meal is a ritual of survival. Ancestral secrets and rituals are interwoven with daily life, and there are areas of the villages that simply defy explanation. This video won't show you postcards. It will take you to the heart of the Alps, where life is measured in effort, honor, and unspoken codes. Anyone who thinks these villages are just picture-perfect landscapes will discover a world that observes, tastes, and transforms. Reaching the heart of the Swiss Alps. Reaching the most isolated villages in the Alps is not a scenic drive. It's an ordeal that begins the moment you leave the main road and venture onto roads that narrow to seemingly impossible limits, surrounded by abysses and precipices that appear to test your courage. Every bend is a reminder that you're not in the Switzerland of clocks and punctual trains, but in a territory where time is measured by the height of the snow, the rhythm of the animals, and the patience of those who have lived their entire lives among the mountains. The first moments in these villages are a brutal shock for any visitor. Wooden and stone houses perched on hillsides, paths that snake toward nowhere in particular, and a silence so profound that even the wind seems to hold its breath. When the shepherds appear with their flocks, the scene seems to belong to another era. Men and women guiding cows, horses, and sheep with the firmness that comes from experience and the knowledge that every mistake can cost far more than money. There are no signs explaining the rules, no emotional maps. The villagers observe, evaluate, and you quickly understand that every gesture, every word, and every glance are part of invisible codes that can only be learned with respect and patience. Outsiders who think they can easily arrive and blend in often discover that solitude here isn't a punishment, it's a filter. Only those who understand the silence, the effort, and the routine of the shepherds survive emotionally and physically. As you travel along the paths connecting the cabins, you perceive that isolation isn't an absence of life, but rather the intense presence of everything that matters: the land, the animals, family, and the honor that is maintained without words. Every flock that crosses the path, every bell that announces milking time, is a silent lesson about who belongs and who simply observes from the outside. Even before speaking to anyone, you already feel you are being evaluated. The villagers have subtle ways of showing approval or distrust: a nod, a lingering gaze, the way they step aside to let you pass. Life here is straightforward, unadorned, and there's no room for improvisation. What might be anecdotal in the city can, in the Alps, mean the difference between being accepted and coming across as a stranger who never understood. Women of the Alps: beauty, strength, and restrained desire. In the most isolated villages of the Swiss Alps, the women are unlike any you've seen in Switzerland or any other European city. Their bodies are sculpted by the mountains, shoulders firm from carrying sacks of hay, arms taut from herding livestock, legs agile from climbing and descending slopes that defy any urban footwear. Every movement is measured, elegant, yet resilient, as if the very rock and snow of the valley had shaped their character since childhood. Their facial features, inherited from generations who never left the valley, combine clear, determined eyes with cheeks weathered by the cold wind, lips that rarely smile, but when they do, they reveal a world of emotions not shown to just anyone. For a visitor, the first impression is intense. The beauty of these women is not ornamental, not offered for display. It is a silent warning that here everything has a price and an unwritten rule. Tourists may mistake simple courtesies for invitations, studying glances for discreet smiles of emotional approval. But in reality, every gesture has a code that is rarely explained. A nod, prolonged eye contact, a small hand movement can signify genuine interest, distrust, or a warning, and learning to interpret it takes time. The differences between local women and visitors are stark. A young woman from the city who arrives with the freedom and carefree attitude of a life without the demands of the valley will be perceived as frivolous, ill-prepared for the harsh routine of the shepherds. Meanwhile, the women who have grown up among flocks, milking and huts know how to gauge their attractiveness, balance their desires, and maintain their reputations intact. Even interest in a foreigner is handled with extreme discretion. Nothing is explicit, nothing is immediate. Here, desire is measured, waited for, and sometimes repressed for the good of the community and the family. However, that doesn't mean there isn't a fascination with visitors. European or Latin American men arriving in the remote valleys often elicit curious glances, mixed with a silent calculation. What kind of person are you? Does your presence disrupt the order? In some cases, fascination turns into emotional tension. A misplaced gesture, an overly direct remark, or a smile interpreted as permission can instantly shift the dynamic. The local women are quick to read intentions and even quicker to protect their space and their reputation. Stories circulate among shepherds and travelers about visitors who thought they understood the valley's codes too quickly. One recalls a young Italian man who arrived in the village intending to impress with his accent and urban tales. A local young woman listened to him, smiled slightly, and he believed he had sparked genuine interest. Weeks passed, and there was never any further contact. He had mistaken politeness and assessment for desire, and he eventually realized that in these valleys, nothing is given freely, and every gesture has consequences. In contrast, there are times when the attraction between locals and foreigners arises wordlessly, in the way they share small tasks, herding livestock, carrying water, preparing firewood. The physical proximity of daily life allows for a body language laden with meaning, an accidental brush, an exchange of glances while working in silence, a gesture of assistance that lingers longer than necessary. These are brief moments, unspoken outside the valley, but they create deep and lasting emotional connections. The routine, set by the mountains. The first light of dawn in the Swiss valleys isn't announced with an alarm, but with the soft tinkling of cowbells as the cows begin to stir. Each day in the isolated villages of the Alps has a rhythm that knows nothing of office hours or urban rush. The sun and the snow dictate the obligations, and those who adapt survive. The farmers rise before the fog completely dissipates, aware that every minute counts, that every step on the hillside is work that cannot wait. Milking is the first ritual of the morning. Hands, hardened by years of work, move with mechanical precision, but also with care, because each animal is precious, and any mistake can mean the loss of food, of sustenance. The cold seeps into their bones, but there's no room for complaint. The routine is absolute, and discipline vital. Next comes the herding, where flocks roam across seemingly endless meadows, and the shepherds, men and women, must watch their every move, prevent accidents, and guide the animals along paths that would be impossible for an outsider. Interspersed among these tasks are chores that might seem trivial in the city, but which take on crucial importance in the mountains, repairing cabins and stables, pruning trees, and preparing firewood for the winters that arrive without warning. Every action requires strength, stamina, and constant awareness of the surroundings. Rain, snow, fog, and potential avalanches dictate the urgency of each task. Here, life waits for no one, and negligence is unforgivable. The seasonal rhythm transforms the routine into an almost ritualistic cycle. Summer is brief, a brief respite of abundance where the sun warms the pastures and the days lengthen to allow for maximum food production. During these weeks, activity seems frenetic. Double milking, extensive grazing, roof and fence repairs, and the preparation of cheeses and butter that will sustain the community through the long winter months. Every food item, every movement, is a direct investment in survival. Then winter arrives, and the mountain changes character. What once seemed benign is now hostile. Snow blocks paths, the wind cuts through skin, and every journey becomes a small, calculated risk. The shepherds move with extreme caution. Every decision is strategic. The solitude intensifies. Days of profound silence, interrupted only by the lowing of animals or the creaking of wood in the stables. This solitude, which might be overwhelming for a stranger, is an essential ingredient of life in the valley. Those who do not accept it break. Children grow up with this routine as their only school of life. From a very young age, they participate in simple tasks, learning to respect the animals and the land, to measure time according to the seasons, and to recognize the dangers that lurk in the mountains. Education is not just academic, it is physical, mental, and emotional. They learn to read the signs of nature, to predict storms, to interpret the behavior of livestock. Every mistake is a lesson. Every success, a small victory in a world that offers no second chances. Despite the demands, there is a deep sense of community. Neighbors have known each other for generations, and work is shared. Some help cut hay, others rebuild roofs, others guide livestock along difficult trails. This cooperation is neither casual nor friendly in the urban sense. It is a silent pact of survival. Every act of collaboration strengthens bonds, and every failure can breed mistrust. Relationships in the valley are direct, intense, and sometimes harsh, because the isolation means that any weakness has immediate consequences. Eating to survive, rustic and powerful gastronomy. In the isolated villages of the Swiss Alps, food is not a fleeting pleasure or an excuse to socialize. It is an act of survival, a strategy of energy and endurance. Every food item has a purpose, and every gesture at the table carries a silent message of respect, belonging, and knowledge of the valley's code. Anyone who doesn't understand this, even if they arrive with the best intentions, risks being branded as an outsider unable to adapt. The day begins early, and the first stop is always the rustic kitchen or the stable. Fresh milk, still warm from the morning milking, is the foundation of everything. It is transformed into artisanal cheeses, aged in caves or cabins where the temperature and humidity are controlled by the mountain itself. Every cut, every shape, has centuries of practice behind it. For visitors, tasting a piece of this cheese is a privilege. The flavor is intense, earthy, capable of conveying the strength of the cow, the patience of the shepherd, and the chill of dawn. Then comes the homemade bread, hand-kneaded and baked with wood from the nearby forests. There are no electric ovens to soften the process. The heat of the fire and the baker's dedication determine the texture and aroma. This bread is more than just an accompaniment. It's the source of energy that will sustain long hours of herding, repairing fences, and hiking along steep trails. Anyone who rejects it, even if out of personal preference or whim, sends a non-verbal message. They don't understand the value of routine and tradition. The cured meats are another example of alpine wisdom. They are cooked and dried according to ancestral methods, hung in huts where the cold mountain air acts as a natural preservative. The flavor is strong and deep, a reminder that food here isn't a luxury, it's resilience. Eating without appreciating this effort is perceived as disrespectful, because every bite is the result of hours of work under extreme conditions. The rituals around the table are as important as the food itself. It's not about sitting down and devouring. There are times for serving, for toasting, for asking questions, and for listening. Evaluative glances sweep over every gesture of the newcomers. Do they accept everything offered or refuse it without reason? Do they participate in the small conversations that accompany each meal or remain isolated? Every action is interpreted, and although it's not spoken aloud, each guest is etched into the collective memory of the village. The act of eating also defines invisible hierarchies. The older locals taste first, and their gestures determine the quality of the food that will later be served. Newcomers must wait, observe, and learn. Showing impatience or disdain is a mistake that is not easily forgotten. The silence that accompanies each meal is dense, full of meaning. Whoever breaks the rules can be ostracized, even if they share the same mountain air. Among the visitors, there are those who believe they can seduce or impress simply by showing interest in the cuisine. But in these villages, attraction doesn't work that way. A local woman won't be impressed by superficial comments about cheese or bread. What inspires respect and fascination is the outsider's willingness to participate, to get their hands dirty, to accept the cold, the effort, and the routine behind every meal. Japanese, European, or Latin American tourists who arrive in the valley are captivated by the strength and resilience they perceive in the locals, and this often leads to tense silences, appraising glances that blend curiosity and restrained desire. Not everything served is edible for its taste. Some dishes serve specific purposes depending on the season. Thick soups of vegetables and grains nourish after long days of herding. Fortified butters and cheeses provide essential calories for winter, and every small sip of milk or infusion of local herbs is designed to revitalize the weary body. Eating in these villages is learning to understand the rhythms of the mountains and to respect the strength of those who inhabit them. Foreigners in the Alps, fascination and silence. When visitors cross the isolated valleys of the Swiss Alps, their first impression is one of awe, mountains that seem like silent guardians, villages suspended in time, and paths that twist and turn between meadows and streams. But they soon discover that what dazzles them is not just the landscape, but the people who inhabit it. The shepherds and their families possess a strength that cannot be learned in gyms or offices. It is an inherited resilience, cultivated by generations who have made the mountains their school, their work, and their refuge. The local women, with their striking features, strong bodies, and measured movements, walk among the visitors as if weighing every glance. They don't smile out of politeness, nor are they impressed by empty words. Everything is measured with silent observation. Here, even the presence of a foreigner is rigorously assessed. Japanese, European, and Latin American women arrive drawn by the reputation of these villages, by the promise of a more authentic life, by the curiosity to discover something that doesn't appear in guidebooks or on Instagram. But they soon realize that their fascination must find its own codes if they want to connect without causing discomfort. For the locals, the visitors are a strange phenomenon. Bodies that speak a different language, gestures they don't always understand, energies that disrupt the village's routine. A misstep, an inappropriate question, a superficial comment, a misinterpreted gesture of curiosity, can generate a heavy silence, a gaze that weighs heavily and teaches without words. Many foreigners quickly discover that there are no second chances here. Respect is earned through actions, patience, and adaptability. The attraction between outsiders and inhabitants is subtle, almost invisible. There are no theatrical gestures or public displays. A smile that lasts an instant, an accidental brush of hands while helping with a flock, or the way someone offers a glass of warm milk, everything communicates. Japanese women, for example, are often fascinated by the combination of strength and discipline, by how beauty here is inseparable from work and resilience. Europeans and Latin Americans, on the other hand, are intrigued by the blend of independence and social rigidity, by women who know who they are, what they want, and how to protect it. However, the interaction isn't always harmonious. Cultural clashes appear in the simplest gestures. A comment about food perceived as criticism, an overly intense gaze, an attempt at conversation at inconvenient times. The locals react subtly, but the tension is palpable. A prolonged silence, a frown, a change of subject, small signals that take visitors days to decipher. Every mistake is met with double-edged attention. Every success opens doors, however small, to the community's trust. There are recurring stories among those who arrive with tourist eyes and those who have spent weeks trying to understand life in the valley. A group of Japanese visitors was captivated by a shepherdess's skill in guiding her flock across rugged terrain. There were no words, only glances filled with respect and admiration, and a restrained longing never expressed beyond subtle gestures. In another instance, a European who tried to joke about the hard work was silenced by the stern gaze of a local elder. The lesson was clear. Life here is not merely a spectacle for outsiders. Sometimes fascination mingles with jealousy and unspoken tensions. The women of the valley observe how the visitors admire one another, how they discreetly comment on the beauty of the locals, and how they are drawn to that seemingly unattainable strength. The local men, for their part, protect their emotional and social territory. Too open an interaction can be misinterpreted, and boundaries are respected even if no one explicitly states them. Silences become laden with meaning. Every gesture, every movement, every approach is assessed, interpreted, and recorded. Secrets of isolation, hierarchies, and invisible codes. In the most remote villages of the Swiss Alps, life is organized in ways that would take a visitor years to understand. There are no manuals, signs, or notices explaining the rules. Everything operates through invisible codes, subtle gestures, and traditions passed down through observation. Isolation, far from being a mere geographical detail, is a catalyst for strict hierarchies and absolute respect. Those who arrive late, those who talk too much, or those who don't know when to look and when to remain silent, quickly feel the pressure of a silence that speaks volumes. Honor here is tangible, almost physical. A wrong word, an inappropriate gesture, an attempt at a joke where it's not appropriate can tarnish a person's reputation for weeks or even months. The oldest inhabitants of the valley are the guardians of these rules. Their glances are measured and their silence devastating. Newcomers, even those who think they know Swiss culture from traveling to cities like Zurich or Geneva, soon discover that the mountains have their own code, far more demanding than any urban norm. Conflicts rarely erupt with shouts or open confrontations. They are resolved silently, through action rather than words. For example, if someone doesn't respect the grazing schedule, the animals don't obey with the same confidence, and the community observes silently until the mistake is corrected. If a visitor interferes without understanding the hierarchy, they are corrected with barely perceptible looks and gestures, enough for them to learn without a lecture. Every gesture, from the way a bucket of milk is handed to how a bale of hay is placed, communicates position, respect, and an understanding of the local order. Newcomers often underestimate the importance of these invisible rules. A Japanese tourist who spent several weeks following a shepherd to learn about alpine life didn't initially understand that she should wait for certain silences before asking anything. Her enthusiasm, though genuine, generated discomfort. The group of farmers watched her cautiously, assessing whether her presence could be integrated or disrupted. Over time, after many hours of observation and subtle adjustments, she began to be accepted, but always with the understanding that respect isn't declared with words, but demonstrated through actions and constant attention. Isolation also strengthens internal hierarchies. Those who have lived in the valley for generations define who enters the social boundaries and who remains an outsider. Even age matters. A young person who performs tasks flawlessly earns points with their elders, while a visitor, however competent, needs time and continuous demonstrations of patience and adaptability to be accepted. The women, moreover, operate according to their own code. They know when to observe, when to intervene, and how to evaluate everyone's behavior, especially that of outsiders. A careless gesture in their presence can alter the community's perception of someone, even if the mistakes are minor. There are stories of tension that remain almost secret. A European tourist tried to lead a group of shepherds to the wrong cabin, thinking that all the paths were the same. The response wasn't a shout or an argument. They simply ignored him, guiding him with gestures to the correct spot, and silence accompanied him throughout the day. The lesson was clear. In isolated villages, power isn't declared, it's exercised invisibly, and only those who understand this survive without feeling out of place. Night in the Alps. Alcohol, confidences, and suppressed desire. When the sun sets behind the peaks of the Swiss Alps, the valley shifts its rhythm in a way that visitors barely notice from the first day. During the day, everything follows the strict discipline of the shepherds: milking, herding, cleaning the stables, preparing cheeses and homemade bread. Every action has a purpose, and every gesture is measured by invisible codes that regulate respect, hierarchy, and coexistence. But as night falls, when the light fades and the mist envelops the valleys, a parallel world emerges. Intimate gatherings in cabins, soft laughter among friends, the aroma of wine and local whiskey mingling with the crisp mountain air. The cabins, many built from centuries-old wood, seem to transform. What is absolute silence and order during the day becomes intimacy and closeness at night. The shepherds and their families gather around worn wooden tables, sharing glasses of wine or a sip of homemade whiskey that has a strange warmth, almost burning the tongue and loosening the tongue. Here, in the dim light and far from the eyes of the valley, secrets are released. Stories of mistakes, regrets, and desires that are kept bottled up during the day are confessed in hushed tones, without fear of judgment, because everyone understands that the night is the realm of restrained sincerity. Visitors who manage to be invited to these gatherings immediately perceive the difference. A European who arrived seeking tourist adventures might find himself facing a group of shepherds who assess him with subtle gestures as they converse and drink, gauging his capacity for adaptation. Eyes meet with silent intensity. Here, one observes who understands the codes of respect, who knows how to listen, and when to remain silent. Mistakes are paid for, with long, cold silences. Successes, with small but meaningful smiles. The feeling is almost hypnotic. The visitor feels included, yet always with the certainty of being observed, evaluated, and fully understood. It is also a time when desire arises, always contained, never explicit. The physical proximity of men and women in the cabin, sharing warmth and drink, generates a tension that hangs in the air like static electricity. A lingering smile, an accidental touch, a comment laden with double meaning. Everything has a precise significance. There is no theatricality here. Attraction is expressed in a measured, almost ritualistic way, sustained by the discipline that has governed daytime life. It is a silent desire managed with the same seriousness with which flocks are tended or cheese is made. During these hours, even the romances that emerge are discreet, measured, shrouded in unspoken agreements. No one is allowed to break the rules, and every gesture of closeness is carefully assessed. The attraction exists, it is noticeable, it is hinted at, but it is neither confirmed nor denied. The Alpine night is a safe space for feeling and observing, but never for acting without awareness of the weight of tradition. It is a constant reminder that, beyond the idyllic landscape, life here is a dance of control, desire, and unspoken rules. At the end of each evening, when the last glasses are emptied and the fire in the fireplace dies down, visitors are left with a feeling of fascination mixed with respect. They have witnessed a world that only reveals itself when the mountain sleeps, a place where the silence of the days gives way to the restrained sincerity of the night. And although the beauty of the valley remains untouched, the true richness of the experience lies in understanding how life is measured between effort, desire, and unspoken rules.